It is a great joy that I will be able to, well, at this point, be able to celebrate my first wedding in this church on Good Friday. To say it's unconventional is an understatement, but Molly and Jordan are running a restaurant that is closed on Good Friday, and so we're taking the opportunity for them to do what they've been waiting to do for a long time. Marriages are such a joyful occasion, aren't they? And we love going to them because they affirm being in relationship. They affirm that it is possible for us to be in relationship, committed for a long time. There are a number of things that we expect to see at a wedding, though, and some of those have been omitted during the COVID pandemic. When we married our son, we weren't allowed to have any alcohol in the park, and we weren't allowed to gather in groups of more than 5, I think. You can't have a party with 5 people and no champagne to celebrate. So we were allowed to celebrate the next day with groups of 5 with champagne, but not at the wedding. You could have weddings, but no celebration. It's not a wedding without a celebration, I'm sure you'll agree. And an important part of that celebration is food. We see a lot of the elements of a wedding in our passage today. Now, it's a short part of the thing that happened between Abram and God, but in the bigger picture, what we have to celebrate in the wedding service is all there. What are some of the things that you would expect to see at a wedding? Say that again. Commitment, yes? Jealousy. At the wedding itself, are you jealous of the bride or the groom? Okay. Is anyone married here with a ring on their hand? Yeah? You don't have to hold it up, it's probably rude anyway. Any other things you might see at a wedding? Happiness? Flowers? Yep. Fern? The vows, thank you. There are promises made, aren't there? There are vows that are taken, and there are consequences that go with those vows. A little while ago, we looked at the Beatitudes, Luke's version of them, and the vows and the consequences, the curses that go with them. Sorry, you were saying? The celebrant. Yeah, someone there to coordinate what's going on, to receive the vows. Anything else? Music. Yep.
The sense of a great joy.
Sense of great joy, yes. Why is there joy?
Documentation.
Yes, must sign it. Or else someone asked if they could sign the certificate before, and I believe that is a practice in some places, but I said, until you say I do, there's no signature, sorry. Excellent, and that's what this is. This covenant ceremony between Abram and God was a coming together of 2 people. One of the things that happens when 2 people marry is that all of the people that come out of them are related, right? So everyone who's the progeny of that couple is related to that couple and to each other. This is an important thing for Abram. Abram is looking down the barrel of having no one to carry on his line, and God promised that there would be a line to follow him. And the slave in his house was going to get all of his inheritance. There's another thing. Well done, Annabelle, on not tripping over Abram. Trickiest word in the story, because Abram we're used to calling something else. Abraham. Where's the H from? Just like in our practice that was held strongly until the 60s, I guess, and then we've been questioning, the partners take a common name, and we take a surname. When Alison and I got married, we were looking at covenant, and we struggled, because if we both take each other's name, then we both have different names still, right? So if I took her name and she took my name, we would still have different names. That doesn't work. So for a while, I took Alison's first name as my middle name, but then that pushed my dad's name out of my name, and that was just complicated. Turns out it's really difficult to do these things. So God took the middle of his name and put it in the middle of Abram's name. And Sarai's name was shorter, but the ch went on the end of Sarah. So they were both joined in partnership with God. Not just Abraham, but both of them. The giving and taking of rings. When I got married, I was a chaplain at a school, and one of the teachers congratulated me as I was heading out to get married, and he said, you know, it may seem like your ring is removable, but if you stick with it long enough, the mark never goes away. It's like a scar that stays with you. Anyone remember what the scar for Abram was? Sorry? Circumcision. He got the snip. Not the snip, but a snip. And that was one of the ways that Jews have been known throughout time. In fact, in the early Olympics, some Jews had to get a foreskin stitched back on because they ran naked and they had to be seen to be pure and whole. If they wanted to be part of that, they were cut off because of their relationship with God, because of that mark of their relationship with God. Now, these are gritty details, and maybe it feels like I've explained too much. But these ceremonies are very gritty. They are intentionally gritty. One of the marks of our wedding ceremony is that both people have to be present. We couldn't undo that during COVID. Both people had to be present, with a witness from each side and a celebrant. How is God going to be present in a commitment ceremony with a bloke? Well, we see it here, and we see it echoed later on. We see the smoking firepot and the torch. Deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a deep and terrifying darkness descended on him. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch passed between the pieces. This is part of the early covenant practice, the passing between the pieces of offering that were offered to as an offering of purity. They were to cover all of the sins of those who were there. And traditionally, the couples to be joined in covenant would be joined as they walked around the pieces. You know, different cultures have different practices. Greeks smash plates, glasses, stomp on glasses, that sort of thing. This was the practice for them, but it was all about being joined in the daily practices of eating and drinking, so that the people would know each time they did these things, it was a reminder that they were connected indelibly. Cutting in half of the animals, in order for there to be cleansing done, forgiveness offered, and purity gained, there had to be death, there had to be sacrifice, And these animals sacrificed themselves in order that this couple would be covered by the purity. Now, we see these things happen in another place on the cross. And the point of coming to this reading in Lent is that it helps us to remember what was happening at the cross. We see Jesus coming to the cross, and it starts with the wedding feast. It starts with a meal with his friends, and we celebrate that wedding feast as part of our weekly practice. As we gather together, we celebrate communion because it is a reminder that the everyday practices that we engage in are a reminder that we are indelibly connected to God. We see the scarring, the holes in the hands. We see the shedding of blood. We see the presence of those there, both sinners and faithful, present at Jesus' death. So, what does this tell us about the nature of a covenant relationship? Well, one of the things that we celebrate when we get together to celebrate a marriage is that the impossibility of connection through ups and downs is being embarked on by these people. These people are diving in, and I don't know what causes some other people to cry, but likewise for a confirmation service, I always get teary because I know that there are going to be difficult times ahead of these folks. So I'm adding another covenant ceremony into this list of ceremonies. We've got Abram and God, we've got Jesus and us, we've got the wedding service, we've got the confirmation service. Each of these are taking on of names. They're giving and receiving of vows. They're giving of commitment, and they're an invitation to all of us to faithfulness. I think that's the hardest part of them all. That faithfulness is hard. It's hard work. Yet God shows us in the story of Israel, all the way through the Old Testament, that failure to be faithful by one partner does not dissolve the relationship. Our faithfulness is not the requirement for God to still love us. God's love for us endures throughout our unfaithfulness, no matter where we stand or how often we step out. This is the great gift of the cross. That gift of faithfulness is marked by all of these things that are reminders for us that God is standing with us no matter what. There is nothing we can do to deserve it. There is nothing we can do to cause God to love us more, or to be more committed to us, or to be more faithful to us. This is a reminder that we can receive every time we eat. You know, when I was a child, I thought saying grace was to say thank you to God so that it was okay for me to eat. But now I understand saying grace is a way of me being reminded that God's faithfulness endures through all of my unfaithfulness and is personified in this food that reminds me of that service that was held when I was confirmed. That reminds me of this meal every Sunday. Jesus said, whenever you do this, remember me. Do it in remembrance of me. Not, that Jesus was a nice bloke, but rather that Jesus has given himself fully and completely, forever, to us. The psalm recites that over and over again. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord is the stronghold of my life. This is not a statement of my commitment to these great things, but rather a statement of the promise that God has made, the gift that God has given, the continual work that God is doing in my life. How do we step more deeply into a covenant that has been made for us forever by someone else without our paying the price? Well, there's the cost. The paying the price is the cost, and the invitation from Jesus is that we would step into that price. Dietrich Bonhoeffer talked about cheap and costly grace. This gift that has been given to us freely, without us deserving it, is an invitation for us to step into that faithful role of the partner who receives the gift that has been given and lives into the promise. I don't know if you've been in a long distance relationship, but we tried that before we were married. I was in Melbourne, Alison was in Sydney. And long distance relationships are hard. But what they do is encourage communication. So we talked a lot more when we were further apart than we did in person. We had other things to do when we were in person. This is the invitation of God to us, that we would embrace the gift of being connected, of communicating, of being in an intimate relationship with God, because he has made the way, and it is not for no reason. My invitation to you this Lent is that you would examine the things, the obstacles that get in the way of your intimate relationship with God. That you would take the opportunity to reflect. What are the things I do that help me to get closer to God? Not everyone fits the same mold. For some people, sitting quietly works. For other people, going for a walk works. For others still, playing music. That's my space. When I play guitar and play worship music, my heart connects with God as I sing. What's your place for intimacy with God? Barbara told us that she's set a place at her table and that she's practicing by sitting at the table and being present to God. What do you do to encourage yourself to come into an intimate space with God? God has given God's self to us entirely, completely, and reminds us at every turn that God's faithfulness to us is never going to change. It's always there, and it meets us in the most mundane of moments. I invite you to meet God there in those most mundane of moments. Amen.